Welcome to Histroy Date Night, a World War II podcast covering the Second World War in chronological order, from the opening shots to final victory. I'm Justin, and joining me is my wife and co-host, Jenny. Together we explore the people, battles, and turning points that shape the deadliest conflict in human history, one date at a time. On this episode, the defining atrocities of the Second World War.
The noose is tightening.
That the Soviet Union officially admits responsibility.
The plan is bold to the point of recklessness. Welcome back to Histroy Date Night. I'm Jenny. Last episode, the Manstein Plan was formally incorporated into German invasion planning. A physicist operated a cavity magnetron held together with sealing wax and pennies. Falkenhorst planned Norway's invasion from a tourist guide in an afternoon. And 588 German sailors died to their own aircraft and their own mines on a mission to sink fishing trawlers. This episode, March 1st through 7th, 5 things happened that shaped the rest of the war in ways that are not immediately visible. The plan that will defeat France is finally formally adopted. And Finnish delegation boards a train to Moscow to negotiate terms that will end the Winter War. The most lethal sniper in recorded history is shot. America's top diplomat visits Berlin and comes away describing the German foreign minister as having a completely closed and stupid mind. And on March 5th in Moscow, Stalin signs something that will take 50 years to be officially acknowledged.
I'm Justin. This week also has the Queen Elizabeth arriving in New York to 10,000 people. The first order for 50 Mosquito bombers, Britain seizing Italian ships carrying German coal, and Batman sidekick Robin making his first appearance, while V. Paris burns. Let's get into it. March 1st, in Berlin, Sumner Welles, the American Undersecretary of State, dispatched by Roosevelt on his European fact-finding tour, arrives in Germany for the second stop of his mission after Rome. His first meeting is with Joachim von Ribbentrop, the German foreign minister, a former champagne salesman who added the aristocratic von to his name by adoption and who has always been regarded by other senior Nazis with a mix of contempt and resignation.
Ribbentrop speaks essentially without pause for 2 whole hours. Welles, who is there to gather information, finds it almost impossible to ask any questions. The substance is predictable. Germany did not want this war. Britain and France are responsible for it. Germany will win it, and there is nothing to discuss. Well, when Welles finally gets back to his hotel room and writes his notes, he describes Ribbentrop as having, in his words, a completely closed mind that is also a very stupid mind.
March 2nd, at the Reich Chancellery, which was Germany's version of the White House back then. Welles meets Hitler. He finds a man who appears calm and physically healthy. Hitler's pitch to the American envoy is essentially what Ribbentrop's was, but delivered with more controlled menace. Germany wants peace, but Britain is determined to destroy Germany. Therefore, there is no other solution than a life and death struggle. He says this without any particular heat, and the absence of that heat, Welles notes, is what makes this conversation alarming.
March 3rd, in Carenhall. Hermann Göring's enormous private estate in a forest that is about 60 miles north of Berlin, full of hunting trophies, stolen art, and Göring's considerable collection of model trains. Göring is one of the top figures in the Nazi leadership. He is simultaneously brutal and self-indulgent, capable of large-scale thinking and pettish bureaucratic feuding. Welles finds him cold and ruthless like the others, but thinks that he at least has the capacity to take a broader view of international relations.
When Welles raises the subject of German treatment of Jews and Poles, Göring does not engage. He changes the subject to his art collection. He shows Welles around. The question of what is being done to Jewish Poles in the territory that Göring's Air Force has been bombing goes unanswered. Welles leaves with the same impression he had coming in, and that is, Germany is not interested in peace on any terms that would require it to give back anything it has taken.
March 6th, in Paris. Welles meets Foreign Minister Alexis Leze, who Welles finds rambling on about the details of his own life that are, in Welles's words, not in the slightest degree significant. He then meets Prime Minister Daladier, who is more coherent and more direct. Restoration of Polish and Czech independence is a primary objective of any peace settlement. Daladier says that he deeply distrusts Hitler, but does not rule out dealing with the present German government if it demonstrates genuine good faith. The diplomat tour has produced no surprises and no breakthroughs. Welles knew this was likely before he left Washington. Roosevelt knew it before he even reads the reports. The mission was never really about finding peace. It was about being seen trying.
The final days of the Winter War are playing out at the city of Viipuri, which is Finland's second city on the Karelian Isthmus, roughly 80 miles northwest of Leningrad. By March 3rd, there's hand-to-hand fighting in the suburbs. Soviet troops capture the railway station. The city's civilian population evacuates on any transport available: trains, trucks, horse carts. The Finnish defenders know the city is lost, but they're buying time for the negotiators to work. Every hour that Viipuri holds is one more hour that Finland has at the peace table.
Soviet forces have established a beachhead across the frozen bay to the west of the city, marching infantry and armor across the frozen Gulf of Viipuri to land behind the Finnish lines and attempt to complete the encirclement. By March 4th, Red Army soldiers have captured the last Finnish-held islands in the bay and established a foothold on the western shore. The noose is tightening. Finnish leadership, General Valinius, commanding the coastal defense, is relieved of command after being found intoxicated at his headquarters during the crisis. Lieutenant General Lennart Usch takes over. By March 7th, Soviet troops are breaking through the final Finnish defensive line at Viipuri.
On March 6th, in a forest near the front line, a Soviet counter-sniper campaign finally achieves what months of effort have not. Simo Häyhä, the Finnish farmer from St. Petersburg, who we mentioned in the past episodes, is hit in the lower left jaw by an explosive round. He is carried from the field and falls into a coma that lasts 11 days. When he regains consciousness, the Winter War is over.
We should say clearly what Häyhä accomplished, because the number is extraordinary. Over the 98 days of the Winter War, Häyhä is credited with 505 confirmed sniper kills. Additional kills from submachine gun fire push his total claims higher. He worked in temperatures reaching minus 40 degrees Celsius, camouflaging himself in the snow, using iron sights rather than a telescopic sight because a scope requires you to raise your head above the snow line. He ate little food to avoid having to move. He controlled his breathing and his heartbeat. He is, by any measure, the most lethal sniper in recorded military history. He survives the wound, survives surgery that rebuilds half his jaw, and lives until 2002. He is 96 years old when he dies. When asked in later life how he became such a good shot, he just said, "Practice."
On March 5th, the Finnish government makes its decision. The delegation for peace negotiations is assembled. Prime Minister Risto Ryti, Foreign Minister Venä Tanner, Juho Paasikivi, and military representatives. They board a train for Moscow. Molotov refuses their request for a ceasefire during the negotiations, which puts pressure on the Finns to accept any deal. The fighting continues while the delegates travel. By March 7th, Prime Minister Ryti and his party arrive in Moscow, and the negotiations begin. The Soviets hold most of the cards. They know Finland's second city is falling. They know the defensive lines are collapsing. Finland's negotiators know it too. The question is not whether to sign. The question is what the final terms will be.
March 5th, Moscow. A memorandum is circulated through the Soviet Politburo and signed by Stalin and 5 other members. The document recommends the execution of 14,700 Polish officers, soldiers, civil servants, landowners, factory owners, and other anti-Soviet elements being held in camps in the Soviet Union, along with approximately 11,000 more being held in prisons in Soviet-occupied eastern Poland. Lavrentiy Beria, the head of the NKVD, has proposed the executions on the grounds that these men, the educated, professional military leadership class of Polish society, are, in his words, hardened and uncompromising enemies of Soviet power. The Politburo agrees, and Stalin signs.
The prisoners being marked for death are the Polish officers and educated civilians taken when the Soviet Union invaded eastern Poland in September 1939. The men we noted as being separated from the enlisted soldiers at the time of their capture. They have been held at 3 main camps, and forgive me for my pronunciations: Kozielsk, Starobielsk, and Ostashkov, inside the Soviet Union. They include generals, doctors, lawyers, professors, engineers, police officers, priests, and government officials.
The killings begin in April 1940. Most of the prisoners from Kozyelsk are transported to the Katyn forest near Smolensk, in western Russia, roughly 250 miles west of Moscow, where they are shot in the back of the head and buried in mass graves. Prisoners from the other camps are killed at other sites. By May, approximately 22,000 Polish citizens have been executed. For the next 50 years, the Soviet Union insists that the killings were carried out by Germany. The mass graves were discovered in 1943 by German forces. A formal Soviet investigation blamed Germany. Polish exile governments insisted that it was the Soviets. Western governments, not wanting to antagonize Stalin during the alliance against Hitler, largely avoided pressing the issue. The truth was known, but not officially acknowledged.
It is not until 1990, 50 years after the decision was signed, that the Soviet Union officially admits responsibility. Mikhail Gorbachev formally acknowledges the massacre and hands over documents to the Polish government. Among those documents is the original memorandum signed by Stalin and the Politburo on March 5, 1940. Katyn is one of the defining atrocities of the Second World War, and its ordering happens on March 5th, while the Finnish peace delegation is boarding a train to Moscow and Sumner Welles is meeting with Daladier in Paris.
March 6th, Berlin. Hitler formally adopts the final version of the invasion plan for France and the Low Countries. The revised operational concept has acquired a new nickname, Sickelschnitt, sickle cut, or sickle stroke. It is worth taking a moment to explain exactly what the plan is, because it is one of the most consequential military plans in history.
3 German army groups will attack simultaneously. Army Group B in the north, under General Fedor von Bock, will break into Belgium and the Netherlands with 3 panzer divisions. Their job is not to win the battle in the north. Their job is to draw the British Expeditionary Force and the best French armies as far north and east as possible, away from the real axis of attack.
Army Group A in the center, under General Gerd von Rundstedt, will drive 7 panzer divisions through the Ardennes forest, the terrain the Allies considered unsuitable for a major armored thrust, and cross the Meuse River near Sedan. Then the armor turns northwest, racing toward the English Channel along the valley of the Somme River. If it succeeds, Army Group A will have cut behind the Allied forces that have rushed into Belgium to meet Army Group B. The Allied forces in Belgium will be encircled from the rear. Army Group C in the south, under General Wilhelm Rieder von Leeb, will engage the Maginot Line to keep the forces there occupied. He has no panzer divisions. His job is to pin, not to break through.
General von Bock objects. He compares the plan to the German advance towards Paris in 1914, which was stopped at the Battle of the Marne and descended into 4 years of trench warfare. He argues that an open southern flank 200 miles long is suicidal, that you cannot drive tanks through mountain forest roads without air cover, and that the whole thing invites a French counterattack into the exposed German flank. He is correct that if the plan fails, the result would be catastrophic. But, despite the risk, the plan will find success. The Maginot Line is not a unified fortress from which counterattacks can spring. Its structure confines the French to frontal defense, and the French army does not move at 50 to 60 kilometers per day, the speed that Germany's panzer divisions maintained in Poland. The French simply will not be able to react fast enough.
The air element matters as much as the ground element. Germany has the Messerschmitt 109 fighters, fast, maneuverable, hard climbing, well armed, and the Junkers 87 dive bombers. The Luftwaffe's ground-to-air coordination means that when the Panzer Division calls for air support, it arrives on time and on target. France and Britain have more aircraft in total than Germany, but a significant portion of the Allied air forces consists of types that are already obsolete. And the Panzer Divisions themselves, 7 of them concentrated for the Ardennes thrust, are not individually superior to Allied tanks, but they are organized as complete armored divisions with no unmechanized units slowing them down. They are fast, concentrated, and independent. The plan is bold to the point of recklessness, but it is also going to work.
March 7th in New York Harbor. The RMS Queen Elizabeth appears over the horizon in the early morning, moving toward Nantucket. Aircraft carrying newspaper reporters, photographers, and radio broadcasters fly out in the small hours to meet her. A radio reporter gives his listeners a live eyewitness account from above the ship at 7:45 a.m. The ship docks at 5 p.m. On the quayside, a crowd of 10,000 people has been waiting most of the afternoon. Office workers in the city shower the streets with ticker tape, a ticker tape parade. The Queen Mary, the Queen Elizabeth's sister ship, is already in port. The two great liners dip their ensigns to each other as the Elizabeth passes. Every other ship in the harbor sounds its sirens in greeting.
She had averaged 24.5 knots across the Atlantic, relying on her speed to evade submarines. She had dropped her destroyer escort one day out from New York. She was faster than the destroyers. Captain Townley, speaking to reporters, says, "It is unique to leave without trials and find yourself in New York." His chief engineer believes that she will prove the fastest as well as the largest liner afloat. And the German false intelligence about her heading to Southampton worked so well that the Luftwaffe actually bombed Southampton on the day the Queen Elizabeth was falsely said to be arriving. But the real Queen Elizabeth was 3,000 miles away.
The Queen Elizabeth will eventually carry up to 15,000 troops per voyage, a capacity that no convoy arrangement and no German interdiction can neutralize, because she's fast enough to outrun any submarine. In her career, she will carry over 750,000 troops during the war. Strict security is maintained at the New York dockside. No visitors are allowed aboard. What the public sees is the world's largest ship arriving. What the war machine has acquired is a troop transport of unprecedented capability.
On March 1st in Britain, the Air Ministry places the first order for 50 de Havilland Mosquito light bombers. The Mosquito, built almost entirely of wood, 2 Merlin engines, a crew of 2, and no defensive armament, will become one of the fastest and most versatile operational piston-engined aircraft of the war. Germany will struggle to catch it. It will eventually famously carry a 4,000-pound bomb to Berlin in daylight. It will be used as a pathfinder, a photo reconnaissance aircraft, a fighter bomber, and an anti-shipping strike aircraft. Its existence begins with an order for 50 aircraft on March 1st, 1940.
And in the English Channel this week, Britain seizes Italian ships carrying German coal. The Royal Navy boards 9 Italian colliers, or coal ships, loaded with German coal from the Rhineland, destined for Italian ports. The ships are brought to anchor off of the Kent coast, while the government decides what to do. Italy protests furiously. This becomes known as the Coal Ships Affair, and this is yet another step in the slow, grinding deterioration of Italy's relationship with Britain and France. Every time Britain enforces its blockade against German trade, it hits Italy too, because Italy is dependent on German coal. Mussolini is being pushed toward the Axis not just by ideology, but by economics. The seizures this week are not the cause of Italy entering the war. That happened in June 1940 for a combination of reasons. But this is one more push toward the Axis for Italy.
So, Welles visits Berlin and concludes that Ribbentrop has a completely closed and stupid mind. Viipuri is surrounded and falling. Simo Häyhä is shot in the jaw after 505 confirmed sniper kills and falls into a coma from which he will wake up to find the war is over. The Finnish delegation boards a train to Moscow. Stalin and the Politburo sign the order for the Katyn Massacre. Sickle Stroke, the plan that will defeat France, is formally adopted. The Queen Elizabeth arrives in New York to 10,000 people and ticker tape. The first mosquito bombers are ordered. Britain seizes Italian coal ships. And this week, the comic book character Robin makes his debut in Detective Comics, all while the phony war continues. But it won't stay phony for much longer.
Next episode, the Winter War ends as Finland signs the harsh terms, and we'll talk about what those 105 days of fighting cost and what they meant. Thanks for joining us for episode 25 of Histroy Date Night. We'll see you next time.
See you then.